have Missy's KONOS H.O.W. manual. Now you know Oikos, we don't like anything to be prescriptive, so you're not going to take this as prescriptive because as I've explained to you, each one to their own, and you need to let it be so. But I'm going to give you an overview so that people can understand. Here are the lesson plans, her lesson plans throughout the year. So she can now in her adult life have had the value because she's exercised the skill over and over and over again, scheduling, getting it right. Okay? Then there's all the book lists and the Bible studies she's done, and you will notice in Missy's manual there's a lot of handwriting, a lot of handwritten articles, research papers, comparison papers. She's typed some of the things up often. It's hand-drawn, it's handwritten, and so on. Some things taken off from research or internet and printed out. Okay, those are essays. Those are reports. Okay, then we've got biographies. Now you'll see Missy did her handwritten biography. This guy's name is Theodisius. I don't know how to say that. And Missy after a while goes, I can't even get the family names, our own family members' names right. How am I ever going to know or remember and pronounce and memorize all of this? Just absolutely not even needed and appropriate. So we did, from that again, what we did with this KONOS, you take the timeline character, you put him on the wall, you see how does he speak, how does that character speak to us with regard to being an example of patience, or intuitiveness, or discipline, or whatever it is. And so we started doing the same. Just we'll read a short, brief biography of that person out in encyclopedia and just see what we can pick up and what we can gain from that. Jamie's biographies is a different story. I don't know my way around it more fast so well, Jamie. Biographies. Here's his biographies. You see, it's an entire file from KONOS H.O.W. biographies because he was fascinated. So he would look up this guy, Howard Carter. He'd read about him and he'd get his photograph and he'd print it out from the internet. So he enjoyed biographies, thoroughly enjoyed. Can you tell? Look at the book. Look at the file. This is file of biographies. Let me show you. Okay. Biographies from KONOS H.O.W. Volume 1, Missy. Biographies from KONOS H.O.W. Volume 1. Oh, wrong book. This one, James. Okay. Completely different result from the same curriculum, two different students. So, one was fascinated and learned, appealed to them. Okay, we carry on with Missy's folder. This just grew as we were going through the KONOS years. Now, you'll see instead of biographies, what follows after that? Stories. So we went from doing these little handwritten biographies to writing stories. Instead, like what she was saying, instead of writing reports, she brought the people that she got that character, an idea of that personality and that character in the biography and brought it into a character in the story and put the report and the biography and everything all together to make a story. But she had the material because of being exposed to KONOS H.O.W. She had ancient history material, really fascinating stuff that she could now use. And I met somebody on Saturday, a 20-year-old young lady who's written an entire novel, that she said a 350-page novel on the ancient, because she did KONOS H.O.W. 1 and 2, she's written a novel based on the ancient the characters of ancient history that she learned about in KONOS H.O.W. So there you go, that's what she got out of KONOS H.O.W. Okay? Right, and then Missy's section of the activities that she did, you will notice, sorry Jim, I don't know if I'm making this any easy for you. You will notice that, do you understand? I can hold this a little bit more. Okay, just, can you see? I think it's much easier. Missy's activities were hand done. These are her KONOS H.O.W. activities. She took photographs of them and put them into a file, just as a record. And as I say, this is not prescriptive to anybody. This is just purely for you to see the variety of different ways that KONOS H.O.W. can, what the result of it is. Missy's Egyptian feasts, and she was really onto all the food and the culture of the, doing that type of thing out of KONOS House would really appeal to her. Hebrew feast, and so we go on. These are actual activities, things that she made, or feasts that she did, or puppet shows. Here's an example. There's little Jamie, this is the little guy. She was doing a puppet show for kings or whatever, and that little puppet themed theatre thing that she made now can be used in children's ministry. So again, we see something valuable coming out of KONOS H.O.W. And she did little finger puppet, hand puppets, and they now happen to be in the children's ministry room in Oikos. So something out of KONOS H.O.W. being used by God in ministry, which is wonderful. Okay, and then there was a whole section on pottery, and so we go on. And the maps, as she's just printed out from her timelines. This was for putting all her work together. At the end, she just took photographs of her timeline just to keep it in her portfolio. And this is what she took with her to university, to theological seminary, and she said, this is what I've done, and they gave her 3 credits, or 6 credits, or whatever it was, because of what she had accomplished in here. Okay, right, and then I'm just flipping through. I don't know if it's helpful for the filming aspects, but a lot of it, what Missy wanted to do in hers was all hand-drawn sketches. This is what she enjoyed doing for a lot of her activities. Okay, now you'll see keep standing with me. You'll see a very different aspect now when it comes to Jamie's file. Fortunately, he does have a lot of his schedules and lesson plans in here, with a lot of his mother's notes on the side. You see mother's notes, blank, what happened this week? You see? Blank.
Oh, there we go.
Or something's happened. He decided to do vocabulary that week. Yay! We're making progress. Now we're doing vocabulary and biography. You see the process is a bit different. Missy's, I don't know if you noticed, every block was ticked. Okay? Jamie's we're going one line at a time here, but there's progress, it's okay. Look, 3 lines. Okay.
So I need to get to the activity
So,
section.
vocabulary, this is how he did his vocabulary. He printed it out, he can do it on cards, as I showed you, as I explained. And now, get to the activities. Okay, it doesn't matter, just leave it like this. Yeah. Jamie's activities, you see Stonehenge. Missy did hers by clay by hand. He did his as a 3D graphic image on the computer. A 3D, whatever, walkthrough. From every view, from this view, from that view, from sunset to sun. That's what it looks like at sunrise and sunset. And so that's what he did. And he taught himself the program to do this. It's some special 3D creation program that he was blessed with by somebody in America. And so that's what he did with his Egyptian, with that particular activity. Missy sat for hours handcrafting, and Jamie sat for hours crafting on the computer and learning a whole lot of computer skills. This is an idea that came up, that instead of doing the questions at the feast, you do an Egyptian feast and you've got to ask, we're not going to, but the suggestion is ask some relevant questions to the guests and see what they know.
Do presentation.
Like a presentation, but instead that doesn't quite suit Jamie to stand up there and do this official presentation. So we came up with this quiz card idea, and he did it for the Hebrews. What is the symbolic meaning of gold? Holy, just perfect, His majesty and glory. That's the symbolic meaning of gold in the Hebrew language. So he used all the questions things that he had picked up in there, he had learned through the Hebrews, and he put them into questions onto cards with the answers on the back, and these have now can become a family game where you play a general knowledge on Hebrews game. This is a product of KONOS H.O.W. instead of all the facts in the book. Okay, so she did that with Egyptian cards. He designed it all on the computer, and these are the questions and the answers he did for the back and so on. And again now, when it comes to making what do you call it? Pyramid, thank you. He did different kinds of designs of pyramids on the computer.
Creative with this pyramid.
The tabernacle, he did a 3D tabernacle on the same program, because we had done tabernacles with KONOS, junior KONOS when we did honor, we did tabernacles, in the tabernacle. So he didn't need to do it in a model form anymore, so he did it on the computer again. Every single dimension is perfect. And what did he learn? that even this Bible, the study part of this Bible says the dimension is that, and another study Bible says it's a different dimension, different measurements. So that was like alarming to his discovery, that how do you know which dimension is actually, which measurements are actually accurate.
Well, which versions of the Bible
Which
are actually
versions?
saying that?
Yeah. And then this is an example of his mapping. There's Google Maps, and there he found the spot and put the little Wikipedia story about that particular thing. And that's what he did for that one. And then there's the pyramids. He took a satellite photograph with Google's mapping abilities. And so now, does Jamie know where all these pyramids are, where they're located? Not so. What he's learned from the Egyptians and from the mapping and all the rest of it is this particular skill on computers. So what do we do now when we want to go on a ministry tour? We ask Jamie, could you go onto Google and get the map organized and find out where we're going? And then he calls us to his computer. He says, look, we can see the street we're going to stay in. You know how they do that? So that is the skill that he's got, and we know he has it because he was interested in it, that he can now be used. God can use him.
Through town.
Yeah, he can direct me through town. That's very handy. Okay. God knew that he had a directionally deficient mother, so he helped him to develop that skill. This is what Jamie's KONOS H.O.W. looks like. It's very much more here, okay, on screen than on a computer than it is in his book. We had to ask him at the end of the year to print all, in other words, print out everything in his computer regarding KONOS H.O.W., put it into a file as a evidence or portfolio for him to keep. He also did all his filing. Missy did all her filing all her ordering in her actual file. Jamie did it on his computers, Egyptians and biographies. He did all the, and a lot of people, us as adults, because we didn't grow up with computers necessarily, the filing on the computer isn't a strong point. You've got to learn how to file on the computer, make the folders and get the order and get everything in place. And so that's another thing that I found good for him to do KONOS H.O.W. on computerized it, was it gave him some computer skills with regard to order on his computer and keeping management on his computer very precise, because if I asked him to look up something and he didn't know we had filed it and he couldn't find it, you know what I mean? It's one thing having it in a hard body copy like Missy had. So it actually taught a lot of those important filing systems skills.